Hello and welcome to A Review to a Kill, the James Bond retrospective podcast where we rewatch every Bond from Connery to Craig to review and rank each one. I'm your host, Special Agent Sedgwick, and returning for this debrief is an agent that ranked ace in spaceflight dogfights.
Chris Carter. That's double ace. I know I'm normally a modest agent.
Today, we are reviewing For Your Eyes Only, the 12th Bond outing from Eon Productions, which was reined back in after the sci-fi heavy Moonraker. The film premiered at the Odeon Leicester Square in London on the 24th of June, 1981.
All right.
The premiere set a UK record in sales, and reviews were mostly positive. They made some odd merchandise for the film, including a Citroen 2CV 007 edition with bullet holes in the driver's side door, and a comic by Marvel.
Marvel was jumping on all sorts of properties in the 80s.
Made for $28 million, it made $195.3 million in the box office.
Holy shit.
The film was nominated for an Oscar and a Golden Globe. The Writers Guild nominated it for Best Comedy.
What?
Yep.
Wait, what?
Yep, for Best Comedy.
I'm just a bit confused.
Produced by Cubby Broccoli, Roger Moore returning. In Bond news this month, it's a brand new year with brand new missions. They're still searching for the next Bond, so we'll let that continue to play out.
Oh, come on now. You know, we're doing a Bond podcast. Let's have just a wee bit of speculation. Who's your guy?
But it's,
Who's your guy?
It could be, it's not who my guy is and anything like
Who
that. I ain't
is
saying I approve
your
or disagree.
guy?
I'm just saying I got money on Aaron Taylor Johnson right now. That's all I'm saying.
Okay. I like ATJ myself. After watching Bullet Train, he's a good pick. He's fit. He can act.
He'll show the world.
He's fine.
We're in good hands.
Granted, I know there's a lot of Henry Cavill supporters out there, and probably even a few that listen to our channel. But take my word for it. ATJ is a good pick.
Honestly, I feel like Cavill might have even been too bland.
To be fair, I think Cavill has kind of been typecast as a Boy Scout.
The dots roll out and music hits with that very early 80s feel. If Bond was an 80s cop show, this is exactly the theme style they'd have used.
Oh my word, the themes.
All of the plates are exactly the same as Moonraker. The dot reveals a graveyard before the black plate just blinks out of existence. We see Bond walking up with roses to Tracy Bond's grave, beloved wife of James Bond. We have all the time in the world. The producer and director wanted this scene for series continuity to specifically say, and this is from Mike Wilson, that this is the same guy doing these things.
Same guy. James Bond, always been the same guy since Dr. No to now. Same dude. They tried to establish that in almost every movie.
They've established it a few times so far, that's for damn sure. They go out of their way to do it.
Yeah.
Bond places the roses, and a vicar, played by Fred Bryant, runs up saying, "I'm glad I caught you. Your office called, and they're sending a helicopter. Some sort of emergency." It usually is. Bond says this as the chopper lands and he enters. Before it takes off, Bond looks at the vicar, who's ominously giving him the old spectacles, testicles, wallet, and watch.
Kind of like the last rites.
We then cut to a familiar-looking white pussy, and then reveal the man stroking it. It's Ernst Blofeld, but they hide his face the whole time and never use his name. Blofeld and Spectre rights were taken by that chode, Kevin McClory. So this was a 3 birds, 1 stone thing. Open the movie, get revenge for Tracy, and stick it to that chode. We don't need your stinking Blofeld. Look how disposable he is.
Okay.
I'm getting ahead of myself. Blofeld is played by yet another chap, John Hollis, but again voiced by Robert Rady. He has some sort of RC device and can monitor and control the helicopter. First, he electrocutes the pilot, played by George Sweeney, which makes the helicopter drop and make a World War II dive bomber sound for some reason. Blofeld laughs at Bond, and he's toying with him, swooping the chopper over the water and letting him know who's doing this. Bond climbs outside the chopper to make his way to the front. The compositing with Roger is naff, but the stuntman Martin Grace, who's back, is really hanging on the side of that chopper as it swoops along the city skyline and darts through construction equipment. Knowing him, he's probably unharnessed as well. It's actually impressive, and when Tom Cruise does it decades later, people will shit themselves.
The stunts that this dude does are fucking crazy to me.
What's a harness?
Yeah, specifically this guy. How high up? It doesn't matter. I don't care.
With some model trickery, the chopper flies into the open facade of a building. Now inside, they really had a helicopter with spinning rotors running. It was on a track, but Roger was really inside of it for this bit. Bond pulls out the receiver wires and takes control of the chopper. Blofeld keeps making the worst puns. But the music strikes up, and Bond runs down Blofeld, picking up his hover round with the chopper boom. He carries Blofeld to the top of a smokestack, and Blofeld says, "We can do a deal. I'll buy you a delicatessen in stainless steel."
That was the funniest thing I've ever heard in a Bond movie, quite possibly. I was like, what the fuck did he just say? I had to rewind it to make sure I heard that correctly.
Fuck did he just say?
Because I was like, did he just say that, like, the world's greatest super criminal just offered to buy this man a
delicatessen
made of stainless steel? What the fuck?
Stainless steel as a trade-off for his life.
That was totally non sequitur. I don't understand where that line came from, other than the writers were like, we should go for a comedy award this year.
He then drops Blofeld into the stack, and the camera flies over the hole for a shit transition to the titles that didn't work, but they tried.
They did kind of try. It didn't work. I understand the pleasure in toying with James Bond, but you know how this ends. Just crash the fucking helicopter. And, of course, he winds up in a chimney offering to buy a man a delicatessen. I understand they're trying to get rid of Blofeld for the copyright stuff, and they're trying to make a joke out of him, but it was stupid.
You know, the whole thing doesn't work, especially as a comedy bit, when they have to throw in some random nonsense gibberish at the end to try and make you laugh.
Right. You're not wrong about that.
Once again, the titles are very blue and watery, but relax, Carter, there's a bunch of water in the movie this time. One thing you'll notice right away is, for the first time, there's a woman staring at your soul and singing the theme at you. This is Sheena Easton. She sucks.
Oh, now I'm going to disagree with you here a little bit.
I knew he would.
Sheena Easton is magnificent. Anybody
sucks.
who can work with Prince. Sheena Easton was great. She had a bunch of bangers. Now, that being said, this was not.
Is she that bitch playing the guitar in the Raspberry Beret video?
No.
I hate that she's on my screen like some proto-music video. This opening is slow, and even the silhouettes look lazy this time.
This was a proto-music video, because, this is the early 80s, just before MTV.
No, exactly.
I forgot she'd done this song. It made radio play, dude.
Yeah, it sucks.
Blah. Very blah. I love Sheena Easton, but not a banger.
Second unit director, famous documentarian Arthur Wooster.
The Woo.
John Glenn brought this guy to meet Cubby, and he came in with Coke bottle frames and tripped on a rug, and Cubby asked if this was really his new cameraman.
That's a horrible first impression.
It's a horrible first impression. Underwater direction, Al Giddings. Aerial photography, James DeVries. Ski shots, Willie Bogner, back from On Her Majesty's Secret Service and The Spy Who Loved Me. This guy is nuts at the shots he gets on skis, and his ski stunt team are almost Olympic worthy.
Oh man, the ski stunts in this movie inspired me to get on the slopes.
Assistant director Anthony Way, and it's been a while, but back on continuity is Elaine Shriek with action sequences by Bob Simmons. Yay.
Yay, I guess.
He's still here from Dr. No.
It's like, I was thinking about this, like, how long is Bob Simmons going to be the guy?
Listen, these are the best fights we've gotten out of Bob Simmons. Like, he's reached his peak, but we've also realized that it's never going to get better than this, though. You know what I mean? Like, this guy has plateaued.
Let's get somebody better.
At this point, he really isn't like the stunt supervisor or anything like they would have called him in the 60s when the only stunts was like flipping around in a fight. Now they just do action sequences by him because he's the fight coordinator now.
Right.
Production controller Reginald A. Berkshire, art director John Finner, Vernon Dixon back on set design, but alone this time as Peter Lamont got a promotion.
Nice. Yeah, that's right.
Editor John Grover and visual effects supervisor, a returning Derek Meddings, master of models.
He's really good, actually.
Director of photography, Alan Hume. These titles suck. Speaking of which, titles by Maurice Binder, who needs to retire.
Maurice Binder has gotten lazy.
Beyond lazy. Nice music video.
13 movies in, he's like, just put some chicks up there. I don't care.
I've said it before, I'll say it again. He is the ultimate example of what happens when superior skill goes on autopilot.
Right.
Production designer, Peter Lamont, stepping in
go.
as Ken Adam was doing a film in America. Music by Bill Conti. Title song sung by Sheena Easton. It's terrible. I mean terrible.
Sheena Easton can belt.
Fair. I don't blame the voice for this song.
I know. It's not a good song. It's not. It wasn't
But
a
there's
great written
nothing.
song.
There's nothing about the
It is
song.
very-
It's just this generic love song. And
Yes.
what's worse, it's caught in between eras of music.
It's caught between disco and synth.
Associate producer Tom Pevsner. Executive producer Mike Wilson, the producer's pet, as he's Cubby's son-in-law. It's funny, you know, Mike's card has a non-silhouetted girl in a pool, and you can see her boobs. It's kind of like he got the treatment.
Pretty sure he's moving up to getting the treatment full time.
Written by OG Dick Maybaum, who's back, baby, but also written by producer's pet Michael G. Wilson. What? He co-wrote this?
I wonder if he's got the same kind of co-writing credit that certain actor got for Super Pets.
He always throws in ideas. He always like comes up with stunts and things like that. He literally sat down and wrote this script with Maybaum at Maybaum's request because he had been bouncing so many ideas off of him in the beginning.
Oh,
so he legit
fair.
is
He
a
legit wrote
screenwriter.
this one. Oh,
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is crazy, but it also explains a lot. Also, I'm not gonna lie, Dick Maybaum, who's been writing these since Dr. No, was probably not in the best mindset to be in the best abilities to be writing stuff at this point in his life.
Yeah,
either.
he's probably getting a little old by now.
He was
yes.
getting very old at this point. Very old at this point.
Hmm.
Produced by Albert R. Broccoli, who definitely also made sure that he got the treatment and did his thing where he shares it with the director, who's a promoted John Glenn. Finally, in the big chair.
Well, that's good. I'm happy.
So, the reason everything was so slow and lazy looking in this title sequence was they shot most of the underwater stuff for the titles in slow-mo with a fan and added blue and bubbles in post, which is how they filmed all underwater scenes with the main Bond girl, as her sinuses did not allow her to dive.
I was wondering. I was like, man, CGI in the 80s was terrible.
Well, it's like, how come they can show all these other people diving, but not her? Any scenes that involve her?
Well, that would explain it. I was wondering, is like, are they doing this just for the close-ups? Like,
yes.
It's weird.
And that's why they always made sure to wear suits that they could do even mids, not even just wides. You'll notice it.
Yes, you will.
The titles don't have some clever transition. They just also blink out of existence, revealing a shitty boat called the St. George's, which was scrapped after being partially scuttled, making this film.
It really sank that boat, huh?
Yep. On deck are the fishermen, hauling in a catch, but down below is a secret door in the fish freezer that leads to some sort of cross between a sub-bridge and an intelligence office. It's odd, but we're rolling with it.
The thing I wasn't rolling with, why is this obviously Navy man on this fishing boat smoking a cigarette?
Out on deck.
Right? It's weird.
The officer, played by Cornelius Garrett, brings a report to the captain, played by Peter Fontaine. Then, another officer named Mac, played by William Hoyland, enters. Mac relieves an officer of duty and takes his place handcuffed to a giant console called the ATAC.
Why would you handcuff yourself to your workstation?
To make sure that you can't take a bathroom break.
Right.
It was beyond stupid.
But I was like, why the handcuff? These are military men. They should be drilled and trained and prepped. Know that
Well,
they have
it's
to stay in
because
their
the producer was like, when it's a really secret, important thing, they handcuff it to themselves. That's the security. There's always one of these guys handcuffed to this thing so no one can make off with it. It was like, bitch, it's the size of a couch.
Right? Makes no sense.
Meanwhile, outside, the fishermen have snagged an old mine and are pulling it toward the ship. It connects with the hull, and we get some nice work from the pyro and stunt teams. Standard Bond fare at this point, but nice nonetheless. Inside, shit keeps exploding for some reason. They go to destroy the ATEX system, but water floods in, knocking all of them back. They even show Mac pulling himself up against the torrent, trying to get to the switch, and getting so close, just to fall back again. Then we watch them all scream and flail and get electrocuted and wait to drown instead of evacuating.
Whoever the screaming guy was, I think he got pinned by a piece of equipment. Water was rushing in. He started screaming. Oscar. It was so believable.
Poor Mac is handcuffed to the console for no reason. He can honestly stand up and pull the lever, but he crouches down in some shots, then pulls his hand toward the lever one more time. But we cut away, assuming that he still couldn't do it for some reason.
Right. I thought to myself, as soon as they handcuffed him to that thing, I was like, that's such a bad idea on a ship. What if something goes wrong? Boom.
Goodbye, Mac.
Goodbye, Mac. Yeah, I'm pretty sure some of them could have got out.
Yep. We then cut to Whitehall. Bernard Lee died in real life, so we won't see M in this movie. The minister's office looks like if M's office was Robin's Egg Blue. There's not much difference. Peter Lamont isn't dressing the sets now. He's making them. And one thing you'll notice is the practicality of his sets, especially compared to Adam's. They're flat and realistic, and in my opinion, boring.
Boring. It's done well, but bland. Need some salt and pepper and some satcheries. Throw some satcheries on that.
The first Sea Lord, played by Graham Crowden, and the Vice Admiral, played by Neil Johnson, come in to report the destruction of the St. George's to the minister. Gray shudders and asks how deep the water is there, and the Sea Lord says, "Not deep enough."
Dun, dun, dun.
Cut to Gogol on the phone in his beautifully draconian office, which Peter had the good sense to leave alone.
New secretary, same office.
Same secretary, that is Rubelvich, and it's
is it
Ava
the same
Steyer playing
secretary?
it. Yeah, and it is Rubelvich, and it is Ava Steyer playing her. She
Oh,
just had her hair different.
I guess.
Gogol says we should get that shit off that sunken ship, and I've contacted my boy in Greece about it. He then hangs up to bang his secretary.
As usual, this dude is always banging his secretary. I think that's his job.
We cut to a Cessna A185F flying over some nice establishing B-roll of Greece. Inside is a man and woman flying to a boat in a bay. The pilot lands near the boat and drops off the female passenger, and she's popular. Her parents greet her, and people call to her to wave at her from other boats. This is Melina Havelock, portrayed by Carolyn Bouquet. Her parents are Sir Timothy Havelock, played by Jack Hedley, and Iona Havelock, played by Toby Robbins.
I recognize Jack Hedley from something.
Her dad is an archaeologist that's raiding temples and has a parrot named Max. Mom's just happy to be there. Melina goes inside to give pistachios to Max the bird. While she's doing so, the pilot that dropped Melina off turns around and somehow makes a dive bomber Foley sound again as his Cessna swoops in over the boat and fires a machine gun, shooting the parents to death. They love that dive bomber noise.
I can honestly say I've been in a Cessna diving, and I never heard that noise.
No, really?
It didn't make that noise. It's weird because I thought all airplanes, according to the James Bond movies, all airplanes make that noise.
Why you were in a Cessna diving?
Pilot was just fucking around, and
Fair
we were
enough. There, I
flying.
knew that was going to be the answer. Hey man, you want to have some fun?
It's pretty much the way that went.
Yep.
Yeah.
The music swells. Melina mourns over her parents, and we zoom in on her super red eyes. Irritate the fuck out of her eyes so it looks like she's crying. Get the pepper.
Just gonna say her acting in this particular scene, a little stiff.
Yeah, it left much to be desired is how my brain took it as well. To be fair, I felt like this was her worst acted scene, and probably
Yes,
because
yes.
she was trying so hard, knowing it was like her most important emotional scene.
Right?
But it
I
did
don't
feel
know.
like she did not nail it.
The emotion didn't land. I was like, is this her adopted parents? Like, what?
We cut to Moneypenny. She goes to a filing cabinet and pulls out a drawer, revealing a pop-up mirror makeup assortment, complete with brushes and perfume.
Does Q give everybody a gadget?
Yes,
Moneypenny has a pop-up concealed in a filing cabinet makeup case?
Q's got a gadget for everybody, including female Russian agents that want to know about his subcars.
You right?
Ba-bam. He's got a gadget for that bitch. Ba-bam.
Wow.
Moneypenny is full-on grandma looking at this point. She old.
She's old.
In the mirror, we see a hat fly onto the hat rack, and James enters. Bond calls Moneypenny a feast for his eyes, and she says, "What about the rest of him?" before sending him in saying that M was on leave. Some good interaction. Hat toss. They are trying to bring Bond back to Bond.
Right?
He also throws her a rose.
Mm-hmm.
He enters M's office, and Tanner, this time played by James Villiers, is sitting at the desk. The Minister of Defense is also in the room, and Bond actually addresses Tanner as Chief of Staff instead of Tanner, probably because he's behind the desk.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you notice when Bond enters and Tanner says, "Ah, there you are, 007? Minister Gray lets out this audible before getting up.
It was an eye-rolling groan.
It was an eye-rolling groan, yes. I mean, if you remember correctly, he tried to have Bond fired in the last movie.
That's true.
Gray asked Bond about the ATAC, and Bond goes off on the info brag. Automatic targeting attack communicator. Uses low frequency, blah blah, to order our subs to launch missiles. Yeah, that thing.
It's funny. Like, he knows everything about it.
Dude, who keeps slipping him confidential information, by the way? This is a serious breach of security in MI6.
That's what I would say. It's like,
Like,
how
how
the
do you
fuck do you know that?
Know this. You're not even supposed to know that. That clearance is over my head.
Right?
Tanner tells Bond the St. George's was equipped with one and sank in the Ionian Sea off the west coast of Albania near Greece. He also tells Bond that Sir Havelock was secretly looking for the wreck for the government when he was killed by Cuban hitman Hector Gonzalez, the murderous pilot played by Stefan Khalifa, Mia's grandpa.
Is it?
I'm so sorry.
Maybe.
No.
Maybe. Could be.
I mean, maybe.
Why not?
Who knows?
Why not? They're both in acting.
So they're So they're sending Bond after Hector, and they hand him a dossier with the "For Your Eyes Only" title drop stamped on it.
Why give agents information that are for their eyes only that doesn't A, destroy itself, or B, have to be immediately destroyed, or...
Why doesn't it automatically self-destruct like a Mission Impossible, goddammit?
Well, you know.
Cut to a Spanish village that's actually shot in the Greek town of Corfu.
I had to remind myself they were in Spain when they started driving through it. I'm like...
That Spanish village doesn't look very
Spanish.
Bond rides around in his Lotus, though noticing the livery and body, this is a different Lotus. This is a 1980 Lotus Esprit Turbo.
With the sport tires on it, I noticed, for off-roading.
Bond passes the Villa Silvia, which is being used here as Gonzalez's home. He turns on a convenient dirt road that goes behind the villa to park. As he sneaks up, we see a hot babe approach a guard that looks like my dad to make out. Early 80s music and vibes are hitting like Thor's hammer, right to the face in this sequence. But good thing the guards are distracted because Bond basically walks right up.
Yeah.
Inside the Gonzalez estate, we see a bunch of 80s hot chicks doing their thing, which of course requires a pool, music, alcohol and/or cocaine, and especially other women and one guy to sleaze around, which in this case is Gonzalez, who's being paid a briefcase worth of money for his hit by a creepy bespectacled fella.
It's a whole hot babe villa. I could tell by their posture that a lot of those women were dancers. I worked in a strip club for a long time.
He was the best stripper they had.
I was.
Just then, Bond gets captured by two goons who take him to Hector. Hector takes his gun and then just says, Take him away. Even though he knows he's James Bond and is essentially an assassin. He doesn't kill him, doesn't ask any questions, or even act like he cares.
So he is a Cuban assassin, probably coked out to his gills, slightly drunk, surrounded by beautiful women.
Ugh, wasting my time.
Wasting my time. You guys caught this dude. Why didn't you shoot him when you caught him? Why is he even standing in front of me alive? I don't want to watch this. Go away.
That's 100% what they were going for.
Mm-hmm.
It ain't how it lands.
No, it's not how it lands at all, no.
There was a woman in the background of this scene, a model named Tula. Every guy on the crew thought she was the most beautiful extra on set. And she was a man.
Oh.
True story.
I believe it. It was the 80s.
Hector dives off the diving board, but belly flops, and everyone laughs until they realize he's been killed with a crossbow bolt mid-dive, and that's pretty fucking impressive.
That is super impressive. That's some superhero type shooting right there. I thought Hawkeye got him.
Bond uses the opportunity to punch out his captors and fight his way out.
Once again, who don't shoot him immediately.
The music is that not quite 70s, not quite 80s vibe you get from the Police Academy score. I love the music. I love the vibes. I love how it's 1981 and it's already got 80s DNA all in it.
But not good 80s DNA. It's getting there.
Bond grabs an umbrella and knocks a dude into the pool with it, then scurries off, still holding the umbrella. He then opens it and uses it as a parachute when jumping off a 10-foot jump, like you did when you were 5. He then uses the same fabric shield for cover from gunfire before running off into the woods. Bond's making a break for his car, and they're firing machine guns, hunting him down. There's shaky cam and rapid cuts, and it's kind of exciting, honestly. The gunshots are right next to Bond, and bits of trees fly off around him.
I gotta say, the stunt work was better than it normally is.
Bond comes through some brush and face-to-face with a crossbow. He freezes, and the crossbow fires, killing a goon behind him. It's revealed to be Melina with the crossbow, and I guess she saw him take Bond prisoner, and that's why she didn't kill him, thinking he was a guard looking for his boss's killer. Bond's superpower is luck.
I guess?
Bond says, "Whoever you are, let's cheese it." And Bond is chased more through the woods, which is odd because he parked right next to the place.
It's like he's running circles around there so he doesn't lead them back to his car.
Fuckload of good, that dude, because his car has already been found by 2 other goons. And when Bob Simmons goes to smash the window, it explodes, killing them.
Was that Bob?
It was.
Bob gets blown up. Nice. Bob did not really get blown up because that was obviously a dummy, but yes, Bob got blown up.
They really felt the Lotus was OP, and John Glenn said that this was why they decided to take it out.
They felt the Lotus was OP?
Yeah, it had been underwater, it had all these gadgets.
But they could treat it like the DB7 and just not use any of that stuff.
Yep, but they didn't.
Let's just blow up a White Lotus.
Yeah. Fuck yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Bond sees his ride go up and asks Melina if she has a car, and she takes him to a yellow 1980 Citroen 2CV6. Bond is mortified. The music literally deflates and does a slight clown honking.
It does.
A splintering shot next to Bond's head takes us right back to the chase, thank God. The Citroen takes off and the goons shoot it up. Bond finds out that Melina is the Havelock's kid. The goons catch up, and Bond says he's afraid they're being out-horsepowered.
Well, considering the bad guys are driving Mercedes and they're driving a 2-stroke Citroen, yeah.
They're in Peugeots.
Oh, are they Peugeots? Sorry. But still.
Which isn't much better than a Citroen.
Not much.
They're chased into a town, and Bond jerks the wheel so they hit dry cement bags and create a dust cloud. Bond says, "Take the low road," at a fork, and she flips the car, causing him to say, "Not that low."
Yeah, that's what you're in for.
Bond's luck superpower has a bus stop the other goons, and none of them just get out and shoot him while he's right there flipping the car. So instead, the chase goes on.
Yeah.
Winding through the hills of Spain.
Yes.
They pull up next to Bond and let him make faces, but don't shoot him. They knock the Citroen off the road because it weighs 100 pounds, and the Citroen tumbles down the hill on the olive nets.
The famous Spanish olive nets, yes.
It's banged up, but Bond flies in reverse and whips it around, and again, the chase continues. Bond slams on his brakes just in time to send one ramming car into the other pursuing vehicle, causing it to flip upside down and slide downhill onto the road below. As the road winds and Bond approaches the turtled vehicle, he drives the Citroen off the hill to avoid it, and the two goon Peugeot 504s collide, spinning the turtled Peugeot and allowing the other to continue in the pursuit.
It's supposed to be slapstick? Is that part of the comedy?
That was slapstick as fuck. That was the comedy.
I could hear your air quotes.
Going downhill, Bond barely misses the goon's car on the switchback. He continues colliding with olive nets and almost running people over, saying, "I love a drive in the country, don't you?"
Yeah, none of those lines land.
That one, for me, I laughed, but not in the way they wanted. I'm like, dude, you're almost murdering people. And they're just trying to get olives so they can pay for their poor-ass family.
That's funny.
I love a drive. You're a fucking psycho.
You are a mortified, straight sociopath. Killer.
Bond hits a berm and ramps over the goons, even skimming their roof with his rear tire. Bond almost collides headfirst with a lorry. Holy fuck, these stunts were kind of nuts, dude. That car barely missed that fucking lorry.
It did. The stunts were not bad in this.
That's what I'm saying. Let's throw a Citroen down a bunch of hills and at trucks.
Yeah.
The goons swerve to avoid the same truck and land stuck in an olive tree in an attempt at a comedic bit. Did it work?
No.
Did it land?
Did it land? Ba-bum-bump? No.
The Citroen rambles on. Cut to Bond and Melina at the Hotel Bella Vista, a Spanish motel essentially. Bond booked a flight, and they're headed to the airport. She says she wants to go back to her father's yacht and continue his archaeology work. But first, she wants to kill the creepy bespectacled bugger who paid Hector to kill her parents. And, maybe the guy who told him to do it. Bond says, the Chinese say, when you go for revenge, dig 2 graves. And she says, I don't expect you to understand. You're English. I'm half Greek.
What does that mean? What does
this
that even
line,
mean?
Maybe if delivered differently, could have worked, but it made me spit take laughing. I mean, it's a half Greek thing, I guess.
I guess.
She says Greek women, like Electra, always avenge their loved ones. Not that Electra. Leave Matt Murdock out of this.
That's funny.
Cutting to Whitehall, we see Tanner dressing Bond down for Hector's death. Behind the desk, Minister Grey says he'll have to tell Margaret Thatcher about this, and she'll have their guts for garters. Which I literally imagined Margaret Thatcher with human intestines as a garter.
It's kind of gross. Just saying.
Bond suggests that they try to identify the creepy bespectacled fella that paid off Hector. Tanner says, stiff and blunt as fuck, by the way. Well, why don't you try the identigraph? Duh, dumbass.
Dumbass? We have an identigraph. I know, and then the minister is all in the background.
Dude, his lines are so great. Like, he probably looked at the script and he was like, yeah, the minister grunts. Oh, okay, I got you. I got you, fam.
Got you, fam.
That's half my lines. I love this movie. Bond even makes a kind of fuck you guy face at Tanner for the remark and leaves for the Q lab. This Q lab is, well, it's a lab. It looks like a cheap lab or a high school equivalent. Peter's sets are too practical. This looks like a flat concrete bunker. Gone is all of the linear architecture and whimsical elements with actual artistic design. It's just a set now. It works. They don't look like shit, but outside of the reuse sets like the offices, they're all flat and boring.
Bland. There's just nothing exciting about any of these sets.
Inside the lab, Bond greets Q and a man named Smithers, played by Jeremy Bulloch. Smithers has an arm cast and is standing next to a seated dummy when Bond asks about the arm. Smithers says, coming along nicely, and then the cast swings instantly into the face of the dummy target and smash the head like a melon. Bond says, that'll come in handy.
Of course he does, because, puns.
There's an umbrella that when wet drops talons and collapses into its bearer. Bond says, "Stinging in the rain?" Q says, "That's not funny, 007, and that is correct."
And he was not wrong. It's not funny.
They sit at a machine where Bond describes the man like you would a sketch artist, and Q types it into the terminal. Male, Caucasian, late 30s, hair fine, light brown, parted in the middle, eyes small, blue and gray, nose piggish, lips full, mouth wide, glasses steel-rimmed, octagonal. Now, they have a girl bring in coffee to show that they've been tweaking the details for a while, but this is still stupid.
Okay, it's the 80s. Computer tech thing is really big. We're going to have a computer terminal and some animation. And it probably cost a fortune, and it was stupid.
This wireframe sketch that took all night and looks like a Hasbro game, but also somehow prints out a mugshot of the exact person they're looking for.
I like how it took longer to put everything into the computer than it did to get a result from international photos taken around the world.
Some 6+ billion people in the world at the time.
You got a database, and it takes seconds to comb the database, but all night to get the description just right.
To be fair, the speed of that database kind of makes the time inputting the data worth it.
I guess.
Emile Leopold Locke, played by Michael Gothard. Bond lists his rap sheet, and yeah, he's a bad dude. What did you expect? He's emaciated and creepy as fuck. The computer says he's in Cortina. So, cut to Cortina d'Ampezzo. Beautiful snow vistas and mountains. A Winter Olympics training facility. A rust-red Lotus 1981 Esprit Turbo. The works.
I like how they get rid of the Lotus just to give them a new Lotus.
It's 1 year newer, bro, and it's red.
And it's red.
Are there any gadgets in it? I don't know. We're not going to tell you that. We're not going to use them. We're not going to brag about them. What does the car do? It drives. Bond drives up to the Miramonte Majestic Grand Hotel and bumps into Stephen King on the way in.
He kind of looks like Stephen King a little bit.
This is actually Luigi Ferrara, played by John Marino. Bond doesn't notice him, but Ferrara notices Bond and notes the Lotus. Inside the hotel room, Bond blends in with the brown leftover from the 70s in his sepia outfit complete with bomber jacket.
Like he melts in.
In his bathroom, he turns on the hot water and the steam reveals Tofana, 10 a.m., before Bond wipes it away. And that's fresh as fuck. Not re-steamed, but whatever. Also, what if Bond used cold water to wash his face, or just didn't wash his face?
Well, I like how the steam instantly looked like a fucking smoke grenade went off in his sink when he turned this faucet on.
He travels to the best hotels with the best hot water heaters money can buy, bro.
Apparently. Dangerously good.
Cut to an establishing shot of the Tofana cable car system, and then Bond appearing on top of one of the Tofane vistas. The cinematographer is no Ted Moore. He is no Claude Renoir. This guy's B-roll is boring. These areas are gorgeous, but the shots are all lackluster.
They are. They're all mediocre. I mean, they make good use of the space, but no interesting angles or takes on it.
He's very unable to capture location money shots as the last two films had done so well.
I keep saying the word, but this is so middle of the road.
At the top, Bond and Luigi introduce themselves to each other, and they talk shop about Locke. Luigi also says he has a Greek contact that'll help, and they're going to see him now at the ice rink. Bond arrives, and everyone is gushing over this young blonde skater named Bibi Dahl, played by Lynn Holly Johnson, who was nominated for Worst Supporting Actress for this part. But let's be fair. I think she played this part perfectly, and that was actually the problem. Because the character is deplorable, cringy, and most of all, annoying. And she nailed it.
She totally nailed it. I don't understand her whole role in this entire movie.
What would happen if you took her out of this movie?
Nothing.
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 It's almost like she doesn't need to be in it. And the fact that she's in it makes it worse.
That just makes me wonder how she got in the movie in the first place.
Bro, Michael G. Wilson wrote this.
Oh, right.
With a damn near senile Richard Maybaum.
Right.
Johnson was a real figure skater and a shoo-in for the role. Her coach, former skater Jakob Brink, is played by Joe Bennett. Luigi engages Aristotle Christados, who is masterfully portrayed by Julian Glover. Christados greets Bond, and they sit to chat. Christados is BB's uncle, in air quotes, and he's super proud of her abilities, though he says she's naive in the ways of the world. Little does he know.
Little does he know. And just to be fair and honest, anybody thinks that girl's naive at the way she throws herself at men, it was wrong.
We cut to Locke, sipping tea and watching nearby, watching Bond from a balcony as Bond inquires about him. Very cat and mouse, and I kind of like the touch.
It is. It's reminiscent of From Russia with Love a little.
Thank you. I thought that too, actually.
Oh, good.
BB finishes skating and hugs her uncle, who introduces her to Bond, who she's instantly smitten with. Gross.
Gross. He looks like he's old enough to be her father.
Father's father. She's a teenager in universe, and this shouldn't have even been done regardless of how they handled it.
It is so cringe.
It's beyond cringe. It's revolting and deplorable.
Yeah.
BB asks Bond to take her to the biathlon, since her uncle will be busy, and Bond says no, but Christados presses him into it. Bond then asks about Locke, and Christados says he's the right-hand man of Milos Colombo, who Christados says is a smuggler in connection with drugs, white slavery, contract murder, the works. He says Colombo is known as the Dove, and that they fought together in the Greek resistance, but took different paths.
It sounds totally on the up and up to me. You just meet a strange dude, he tells you about this other dude, gives you a whole backstory and no kind of evidence.
I mean, so far so good. It's just like every Bond movie. He meets the ally, the contacts, and whatever. He gets the info, and we just go for it. We've never had any reason to question anything. I don't know why we are now.
Right.
As they walk away, Bond asks Luigi if Colombo could manage a salvage operation, and Luigi says, oh, definitely. And we see a Zamboni drive by in a blink-and-you'll-miss-it setup device, and I love it.
When I saw that Zamboni, it's like, foreboding Zamboni.
That's the name of my next band.
Foreboding Zamboni.
They cut to Locke, still watching Bond and not killing him. Then they cut to Bond spotting Melina going into a shop. Bond parts with Luigi and walks toward Melina. She's buying a crossbow, of course. Outside, dudes on motorcycles with spikes in the tires bide their time. She tells the shop to send the crossbow to her hotel and starts to walk through the square when the motorcycle goons rev up and Bond darts out toward Melina. He hits one with the barrier post and the goon makes a funny "Yolf." Bond then does the Indiana Jones motorcycle spoke trick with the post and the other goons ride, sending the Yamaha into a snow pile and the rider into a glass window of a shop, almost breaking his neck, barely missing the ledge as he flew in upside down.
I saw that.
So the spoke trick makes even less sense here than it did in Indiana Jones, as he just puts it underneath the tire, and then the tire spins the post to the back of his front forks. But just like with a soda can when we're kids, nothing happens when you do that. The tire slides underneath it, as there's nothing to lock the motion or provide any real resistance.
Yeah, but, it's James Bond. He got lucky.
The weird thing is why didn't they just do that all in a wide? Why did they have to cut to a quick insert of a close-up of the post going underneath the tire and doing that, so you saw that it really was never doing anything? If they left that in wide, it would have been up to our imagination the whole time.
Right. No, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. Physics. They need a physicist.
Bond tells the flower shop lady to send flowers to the funeral, so maybe the goon did break his neck. He chases Melina and asks why she's here, and she says she got a telegram from him to come here, and he knows he didn't send it, so Bond knows something's up. My whole thing is who actually sent that?
Right.
And why? That it's never really addressed. Like, I guess we're supposed to assume that the bad guy did it, but it makes no sense as to why.
Right.
At all.
Yeah.
They board a horse-drawn sled and have what's supposed to be a heartfelt bonding moment with a soft piano and violin refrain of For Your Eyes Only. Bond convinces her to leave and wait for more info from him, And this all felt pointless. Why did we even do this with her here? What was accomplished? She shows up and he's like, hi, all right, good to know you're still in the movie. I remember you now. Bye. Wait till we need you.
I love how they had to argue before she falls in love.
She's Greek.
She's Greek.
Bond gets back to his hotel, and there's a sign on the door that translates roughly to, do not fucking disturb.
Is it roughly?
Roughly. Inside, he hears his shower running and draws his Walther, but out strolls BB Doll in a towel, but completely dry.
Even her hair.
She gets in his bed and takes off her towel, saying she'll do anything for him, but Bond wants none of it. He looks uncomfortable and demands that she redress. She laughs at her uncle, thinking she's still a virgin, and Bond says, yes, well, get your clothes on and I'll buy you an ice cream.
Because you're 12. Get out of my room. What are you doing?
I'm about to get arrested. She dresses instantly and pounces on him, kissing him. Roger legit looks mortified, and they played this the right way, but again, it shouldn't have been done at all.
Nah.
This is awkward at best and deplorably revolting at worst.
And pointless.
And pointless, as we've said, adds nothing to the movie, it detracts from the movie. We could take it away and you'd never notice. Roger hated this, and I agree. We get that Bond gets every woman ever. Let's not flirt with pedophilia for a non-laugh. It doesn't help that Roger is starting to look loose and wrinkled.
Right? It doesn't help.
Cutting to the biathlon, we see Locke out and about before cutting to Bond and BB skiing. Wides were done with stunt doubles, but a lot of close-ups were done of the actors, with them tied to sleds led by other stunt skiers.
Really?
Yep. And while Bond and BB watch the race, she sees this man, Eric Kriegler, the East German champion played by John Wyman. She calls him beautiful, and Bond calls her fickle.
Which seems to go right over her head. I was beginning to think BB just stood for blonde bimbo.
Bond leaves her, and she makes him promise to stop by the rink later to say bye before she goes back to Greece. He skis off, and Locke follows in a Mercedes-Benz 200. As Bond skis on, shots land near him, and he ducks behind a tree. He's being hunted by Eric Kriegler. Bond skis off, and Eric shoots one of his poles away. Bond does a nice spin jump over some goons, and Eric eats it on the same attempt. The other goons jump on their spiky Yamahas, and they all follow after Bond.
Motorcycles are not the most practical chased vehicles in the snow. Spikes or no spikes.
He gets to a long jump area, and Locke meets up with the goons and Eric. Bond hides in the crowd, but they know where he is. Bond gets on the lift with the other skiers as Locke and co approach. The doors close just in time, and Bond relaxes. But then the doors open again, and the goons enter. Now, the goon, front and center here, in the mustard turtleneck with blazer, is Klaus. Klaus is a lion. Don't fuck with Klaus. This is Charles Dance, who played Tywin Lannister, and as such, Melina is the perfect choice to take him down with her crossbow while he's on the toilet.
I recognized him immediately as the great Sardo Numsi from The Golden Child.
Or the doctor from Alien 3.
Or the doctor from Alien 3.
At the top, Bond heads for the ramp. It's tense as he's followed in the queue. Bond spots a dove pen on Locke's jacket. Outside, Bond notices the hit squad at the bottom, waiting to shoot him in broad daylight when he lands. So Bond turns to see Locke threatening to shoot him then and there in broad daylight, but not doing so
in front of the crowd.
Just like they will at the bottom.
Right.
But he's not doing so because then the movie would be over.
Yeah.
We'll only kill you in front of everyone after he does the jump.
Yeah, do the jump. Everybody wants to see you jump.
Yeah, it'll be cool. And you might kill yourself saving us the trouble. Bond latched into his skis and goes. Klaus, for some reason, launches alongside him and punches Bond. Then they ride together down. And all this does is fuck up Eric's shot at the bottom.
Yeah, I don't understand why Klaus did that.
I have no idea why, except to make it to give a reason why Eric couldn't shoot him.
I guess. And if Eric was such a good shot, it shouldn't have made much of a difference.
Bond skis into Eric, and the chase begins anew. The Bogner is on point, always has been. His team is amazing. The best shots of the film are Willie Bogner's ski segments.
I agree 100%. Ski chases were the best.
They got lucky with the motorbikes here. It snowed a few months before shooting and not since, so the snow was more compact and even ice at times, which really helped the bikes with their spike type.
Yeah.
Had it been fresh powder, they might not have been able to shoot all this.
Yeah, okay, fair.
Those bikes have machine guns, by the way, which shoot at Bond as he continues to ski at high speed through the trees with one pole.
I said I don't want to get into the physics of those bikes, machine guns, and where they were mounted and how bullets were.
Well, I just like shooting the ground 5 feet in front of me constantly.
Physics are not a thing in the Bond universe.
Bond then cuts into a ski class for no reason. The motorcycles pass him in the shot, and Bond hockey checks the instructor, and all of the students domino over for no reason. No one even touched them.
Was that the air quotes comedy again?
The chase goes on, and the bikes are behind Bond again. Maybe they waited for him to pass. So sporting of them. Bond and bikers run over tourists at one point, and it's hilarious. Get out of the way, bitch. We're shooting here. For me, the sequence went on too far. This was very obviously an accident where they were chasing Bond through a ski resort, and some lady got right in the middle of their path. And it's in the movie. Really sweet jump onto a picnic table and back onto the mountain, followed by the bikes just crashing through it. Then, for half a second, seriously, blink and he's gone. Victor Torjansky pops up with some sherry and a huh face.
Yes, he does. I noticed him.
Completing his trilogy.
Yeah, because something always happens while this dude is having a glass of wine.
Racing through the trees, Bond props his last pole horizontally against two trees. This takes out one of the bikers who tumbles spectacularly down the mountain and is almost crushed by his bike.
I noticed that. It looked like it landed on his foot.
The cameraman started turning away from him at that moment, knowing he might be capturing the dude getting crushed. Like, oh shit, move. Bond then skis onto a bobsled track, behind a bobsled still with one bike following. Bogner, being the crazy bastard he is getting these skiing shots, said, I want to follow a bobsled. And John Glenn said, well, you can't go fast enough. And Bogner offered to be tied to the bobsled at speed.
Really? Is that how they got those shots?
Yes.
The dude is nuts.
There's a silly moment where the bobsled team notice Bond, and the reactions and interactions are either completely silly or just executed in a cartoonish manner, depending on the case.
Right.
The music is also epic, but at times overwhelmingly chaotic.
Yeah, 80s synth pop.
Bond ramps out the side and skims a rooftop, tumbling when he lands. The bike crashes through the wooden structure and into a medieval guardrail, flipping the rider over, who happens to be Eric. He grabs his rifle, but it's bent up, so he throws it at Bond's feet. He then grabs his beat-up bike and hurls it like 2 feet at Bond. He tosses a wheel as Bond skis off to the safety of a transition.
Oh, how does he throw his motorcycle farther than the front tire? I was just curious.
Cut to Bond pulling up in the Lotus to the skating rink. He leaves Luigi in the car, but warns him not to touch any of the switches, even though Luigi eyes everything like a kid in a candy store.
It looked like Luigi was going to immediately start pushing buttons.
He did, dude.
Like a child.
Inside, BB is skating, and Bond is standing with her in the center of the rink when she kisses him, but only after making sure her coach was watching.
Right, yes. This was not a kiss for Bond. This was a kiss for her coach.
Yeah, her entire life is lived in the service of this sport and for others, and I think all of this promiscuity is just acting out for attention.
Mm-hmm.
Her coach calls her in, and some hockey players come out with a goal net and gear. The 3 players shoot goals for like 2 seconds as BB walks away. Then the lights go out, and the hockey goons attack. 3 checks, and into the wall. Bond then barely misses getting a blade to the face. He flips 2 goons and disarms one. Now, armed himself with a hockey stick, Bond goes on the attack. He knocks one goon into the goal, getting the scoreboard to count the goal and toot the celebratory horn. So, Bond hit this guy in the gut, but since it scored a goal, he's out. So Bond goes after the next goon, who he just spins into the goal, but again scored, so he's out also.
It's a magic goal.
Bond jumps on a Zamboni and GTA's the last guy into the goal for a hat trick.
Oh, I'm gonna skate right at the Zamboni. I can take it.
Outside, Bond sees Luigi has been strangled to death. Maybe you should have allowed him to touch a couple of the switches, James.
Maybe to lock the door.
That's a switch. He told me not to touch it. In this somber moment, Bond finds the dove pin in Luigi's dead hand. Cutting to Corfu, we see Melina getting off a boat when James helps her off. He gives a quick explanation of how he was told where she was, and they go to the market to shop. They eat exotic foods and catch locals dancing. They go to the balcony terrace at Echelon Palace, the same place they'll shoot the later casino scene.
Huh?
The For Your Eyes Only refrain plays, and they get to know each other some more. Cut to a little later, that same night, and in real life, just on the first floor of where they just were, Bond plays Baccarat in the casino against a pudgy pop-eyed fucker named Bunky, played by Paul Brook.
I was thinking to myself, Bond must make a fortune just gambling.
Dude, how do you think he fucking has Amiga watches? 10 grand.
Like, just gambling. He makes a fortune. That's how he makes his money. It's not working for the MI6.
A woman teases Bunky about losing to Bond. This is Contessa Liesel von Schlaff, played by Cassandra Harris. She goads Bunky into going all in on the next hand, which of course Bond wins, as Kristatos watches. Kristatos came in near the end, telling Bond the odds say to stay, but Bond said, odds are for bitches and protocol droids.
He says something like that, yes.
Bond and Kristatos dine outside. Kristatos says, you want Columbo? He's a heroin smuggler. You work for British narcotics, don't you? Bond just says, go on. And Kristatos smiles, pleased with himself for the deduction, or at least feigning it. Which is genius in the long run, but we'll get there.
Right?
Kristatos says, you may have to kill Columbo. I hope you're up to it. Kristatos then points out Columbo sitting nearby. Now, Columbo is portrayed by Ham Topol, simply known as Topol. He was the fiddler on the roof, and he fucking shines as Columbo.
Man, I love this guy.
Columbo walks off from his table he had with the Countess from the casino, and waiters serve Bond and Kristatos. As they do so, another waiter takes their flaming centerpiece away, which has a tape recorder in the base that Columbo uses to replay Bond's previous conversation, hearing Kristatos' hit on him.
The moment they took that lamp off the table, I was like, what the fuck?
Why are they doing that?
Right. Like, isn't that not suspicious?
And it is. And I thought this was genius. They did that while two other waiters were bringing out food and drink and distracting them by, hey, look at this bottle. Oh, look at this food.
Yeah, okay, I could buy the distraction. But not if you're a trained super spy. I'm just saying.
Yeah, our trained super spy doesn't observe shit, makes the worst decisions in the world, and looks like he's about to offer me a Werther's original at this point. It took him like 8 movies to check corners and stop fucking getting jumped in bathrooms.
It did. That's sad.
The Countess stares daggers at Kristatos, who does it right back, and Bond just drinks up, almost like he feels the awkward tension. Columbo rejoins the Countess, and after a second, she jumps up saying, how dare you talk to me that way? I'll talk to you however I want. Now sit down, you're making a spectacle of yourself. And she dumps her drink all over him. Get out, he yells. Nothing would please me more, she says, as she walks off, eyeing Bond like, come hither.
I thought she was going to leave her number on the table. That's what it kind of looked like.
Flagging his attention or something.
Mm-hmm.
This could be an opportunity, Bond says. Or a trap, Kristatos says. Yeah, fuck the odds.
It's like, hey, look, there's a woman of age, not a teenager. I gotta bang somebody in this movie, and I'll be back.
Kristatos says take his car and send his chauffeur back for him. So, cut to Bond and the Countess in a 1970 Rolls-Royce Silver Shadow. Bond asks if she knows any smugglers, but she just wants to fuck. They get to her place, and she says come in for champagne and oysters, And just then, Sean Connery pops out of the bushes and says, "Oh, I thought she'd never ask."
Thought she'd never ask.
Bond sends away the car and goes inside to bang. Inside, she's finishing the champagne and he's chillaxing. Damn, look at that fireplace.
It's a pretty big fireplace.
She gets tipsy and says her nighty's slipping, and he says, "So's your accent." She's actually from Liverpool, and Bond says he knew her fight with Columbo was an act, and she says Columbo knows Bond's a spy, and she's here to find out more about him. Columbo knew to bug a table, and which one. Okay, maybe he always bugs that table, and just was smart enough to have the waiters seat them there. But she had Bond's treats on ice waiting? Convenient.
It was pretty convenient.
1 hour, 8 minutes, 53 seconds. Liesel goes in for the bang, and you can see, for a tenth of a second, her nipple, baby.
Did you just give a nipple timestamp?
Yep. She jumps on Bond, and he jumps his drink all over her settee. By the way, Melina saw Bond leave with this chick, so she knows he's dicking her down.
She didn't seem to care.
Hard cut to the next morning, and they're walking the beach when all of a sudden, Locke parks a dune buggy on a dune. Then, Klaus and another goon burst out in their own dune buggies, trying to mow Bond and Liesel down.
The Countess.
Bond shoots the tire of the rando goon and takes him out, and Liesel runs out onto the beach in the open. Locke revs up and runs her down. It's kind of terrifying, actually, and pretty well done.
It was not bad at all. It looked like the stunt woman hit her face on that windshield fairly good.
And they definitely sped it up a little bit, but nowhere near as bad as they used to. And it was kind of like this cross of actually, like, let's hit her as fast and hard as we can safely do it. And then we'll speed it up a little bit more. And that combination made it look real and brutal.
Yes, it did. Yes, it did.
Roger's Bond feels the pain of every lost girl and every dead ally, I've noticed.
Yeah, he takes it personal.
He takes it personal, every one of them.
Yep, not like Sean Connery, who could not give a fuck.
He could not give a fuck! Yeah, right? That's the thing. It's so weird. Klaus rides up and holds Bond at gunpoint as Locke also rides up to aim at Bond. When a harpoon pierces the chest of Klaus and Bond kicks Locke's gun, and Locke cheeses it. Bond checks on the fallen Countess, and Scuba Steves with doves on their wetsuits come out of the water. Bond sees the dove and tries to pull his gun out, but they knock him out.
Dun dun dun, fade to black.
He wakes up on a sailboat and is taken to Columbo. Columbo says, "Bro, you want me? I'm here. But it ain't me you're after. It's Christados. He's playing you like a fool against me, having his two enemies take each other out." Columbo says, even when they fought together, Christados was a double agent. Bond laments that Britain gave Christados an honor, and Columbo said, "I would laugh were my heart not so heavy for poor Liesel." This guy has that Ali Karim Bey swagger. I love him.
Yes, he does.
Topal was born for this role.
Yep. He does have that Karim Bey swagger, and I really wanted to put him way up on my list.
Columbo says, "I'll take you to Christados' warehouse across the border in Albania tonight." Bond says, "If I don't report back tomorrow, the might of the Queen and the Grecian police will strike down upon you with furious anger."
Not quite, but close.
Columbo says, "Don't worry, by tomorrow we'll be good friends," and offers scotch. "Let's drink to that." Bond says sternly that he'll wait till tomorrow, and Columbo does a fake out by pulling a gun on Bond just to hand it to him, saying, "You'll need this." Columbo says, "I like you. You have balls. I like balls." And Bond says, "So do you," and takes that drink after all.
In Bond's defense, he even checked to see if there were bullets in his gun.
Yeah. He didn't John McClane him.
He didn't John McClane him.
Cut to the SS Columbina, arriving in Albania. Columbo, Bond, and others wait in the shadow of the giant sail yacht as it nears the dock. Cutting to the dock, we see Locke being a deck boss for some reason.
Yeah, because, that's his job.
This guy is everywhere, and it doesn't even make sense. You can't do everything in the company, bro. Odds are eventually Bond would go somewhere where he wasn't.
Odds are eventually he would go somewhere where it wasn't. But Locke is the boss. Gustavus is a puppet head. Locke is the real boss of this whole operation.
That's an interesting theory. Columbo's crew takes over Christados' goons, but Locke gets away. Then, some poor bastard who isn't dressed like any of the other goons and was just the janitor coming up for his cigarette break comes out onto the deck, and Bond immediately punches him and throws him off the ship.
I noticed that. Some poor guy who came out of the door, he's like surprised at what the fuck is going on. He just gets punched before he even can understand what the fuck is going on and thrown off the boat. I also know, like, how did they manage to sneak a whole sailboat up on these guys? Nobody noticed this thing pulling up. Not one person looked up and like,
The
hey.
sails are like silencers for boats, okay?
Yeah, because as soon as they lowered the sails, that's when they noticed the boat. Their profile's smaller, so you noticed?
Bond and Columbo do that bit where they aim at each other for a second and then go like, phew, oh, almost got you, bro. They do that bit a lot in wrestling.
They do that bit a lot. Almost got you, bro.
This fight is insane. It starts on docks and infiltrates so much territory over the docks with so many men doing so many beats over and over in the middle of the night. They're using blanks this time, and blanks actually fire shit out sometimes. And T'Pol caught shrapnel to the face in shooting this scene.
Oh, did he?
This scene, for what it's worth, is a Bob Simmons masterpiece.
It is. It's good.
They squish a dude with a tank of opium and go into a warehouse looking for Locke. Bond finds deep water salvage equipment, and Columbo finds the opium. Meanwhile, Locke is putting grenades on a sea mine and putting it on a plunger detonator somehow, and for some reason. But the good guys tumble the oak drums onto the goons, and the shootout continues. Locke again runs away, and Bond nades a dude. Locke sets off his super bomb and destroys the building, killing many people, but not Bond or Columbo. Locke then takes off in his blue Mercedes 450 through the winding cliffside roads and tunnels. Somehow, Bond is able to run up 1,000,000 stairs faster than the car could peel out up the switchbacks, and Bond gets ahead of the car.
So, couple of things here. I just wanted to point out that the explosion, the model that they used in the explosion, was really well done. And I'm beginning to see why the writers were like, let's put this in for best comedy, because that running up the stairs gag was fucking hilarious.
They keep cutting the inserts, and he's like in the middle of like hundreds of stairs. Like, you're never going anywhere, bro.
Yeah, like it didn't look like he moved it. Like the car would go up 2 curves, and then Bond would be on the next flight of steps. Like, it was like he's never gonna catch that car.
But somehow he does, and Locke speeds up to roadkill Bond, and Bond shoots him in the shoulder, causing Locke to spin out and end up perched precariously on the precipice.
Weird.
The car teeters on the edge as Bond approaches slowly, like a badass. The music stings, and it's so cool. Bond holds up the dove pin and says, "You left this with Ferrara, I believe." And fuck me, that was so fucking cool. It was ice cold. He tosses the pin into the car and then kicks the car over the cliff in the coolest moment, in my opinion, my personal opinion, I believe, that Bond has had so far. And Roger didn't even want to do it because he thought his Bond was too soft.
He thought his Bond was too soft?
Yeah. He said his Bond wouldn't do that.
I don't care who wrote that scene, because I'm glad they left that in. It was pretty dope and kind of hardcore.
That scene set the standard of Bond moving forward.
Right. It was the first glimmer of a real hardcore James Bond.
For me, that's the moment that took us out of the era that Connery started in the 60s and into the era that we're still in, the modern era, 80s movies to now.
Right.
The car smashes against the rocks as it tumbles to the rocks and sea below. Columbo and crew run up, and Bond says he had no head for heights.
That's my best one-liner in this whole movie, because nothing else landed.
Cut to the ocean. Divers are collecting artifacts under the sea.
Under the sea.
And swimming around with sea turtles down where it's wetter. Then we see Melina, who, as I said before, was shot in slow-mo with a fan and tinted blue with bubbles added in post.
It's funny because her hair is always going up on close-up, but as soon as they pull out, her hair is just normal underwater. But on the close-up, it's shooting straight the fuck up.
Any scenes where Roger is with her are done the same way, as she
Yeah.
could not dive. Anything not a close-up are stunt doubles, so they could actually show people swimming to sell it.
Right.
Bond and Melina surface and go aboard her boat to talk about the St. George's. Bond tells Melina that Christados killed her father, so that her father wouldn't find the St. George's before he could, which also doesn't make sense, by the way, considering Christados sank the St. George's. He knew exactly where it was, and the only reason he didn't have the ATEC is because later he says he couldn't disarm it,
Yeah.
which also doesn't make sense, but we'll get onto all that later.
Okay. Yeah.
It's almost like this movie is horrible, horribly written,
Horribly written.
executed very well, horribly written.
Technically perfect. Horribly written.
They look over her father's notes and find he marked a diving bell in an area and 3 days later a wreck, then was killed the next day. So someone planted that mine.
Someone planted that mine. Maybe it was the guy who had access to mines at the opium facility.
You know what I'm saying?
Which is, why did you have a sea mine in your opium facility?
So we could connect the dots.
Dots connected.
It's one of those things that I mentioned earlier that doesn't really serve a purpose in universe. It's for the audience.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think about it, it's stupid.
Yep.
The two board her sub and head out to find the wreck. Lots of B-roll of a submersible called the Neptune. Eat your heart out, James Cameron. They find the St. George's exactly where expected and suit up to dive over. Cutting to Christados aboard his yacht, the Santa Mavra, which is actually the Panther in real life, and even though covered the stern, there's still livery on the sides of the boat that said Panther.
Funny I didn't notice.
Christados gets an alarm and knows someone's down below at the wreck. Cutting back to Bond and Melina, they exit the Neptune and scoot over to the wreck, entering through the blast hole in the hull. A shark jump scares Melina. Bond says, I hope he was dining alone.
That's silly.
In the ship, they find the men all dead but remarkably undecayed and uneaten.
Yeah, I know. It's like, how long were these actors holding their breath?
Bond enters the room with the ATAC and starts dismantling the thermite charge that was never pulled. We cut to a first-person shot of someone else entering the wreck, and then back to Bond, who's checking a card for the wire-cutting sequence, which is just a left-to-right sequential order. Super easy, barely an inconvenience.
Super easy, barely an inconvenience.
He then removes the ATAC as a goon, bursts in wearing a deep diving outfit with bladed and serrated claws and everything. He wants the ATAC, and he attacks.
Really?
Bond puts the thermite charge he removed on the diver's back, and in his hard shell, he can't reach it. Bond struggles with him for the ATAC, and even underwater, they break glass and destroy the set in a slow fight.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. It's a lot of force to move that hard underwater.
Plus, that glass that they use in those illuminated old Soul submarine maps is like an inch thick,
Yeah.
tempered glass.
It's tempered glass, so not easily broken all over the
Shoot
bridge.
that shit and it won't fucking shatter.
Right?
He pins Bond and cuts Bond's suit, but Bond swims away with the ATAC, and the time runs out for our diver goon. He explodes in spectacular fashion, and the heroes get back aboard the Neptune.
I don't know if you noticed, but his suit totally exploded outwards in every direction.
Almost like the bomb was directly inside of it instead of outside.
Kinda, instead of outside. Yeah, well, I don't want to harp on the physics thing, but physics.
Explosions take the path of least resistance, folks. Just as they are catching their bearings, another sub called the Mantis attacks. It uses its pliers and drill to fuck the Neptune up. James has a bigger sub, though, and shoves the Mantis into the blast hole on the St. George's. They escape by ramming into a 5,000-year-old sunken temple column when he could just move anywhere in 3D space.
Right? He's underwater. I don't want to call it necessarily a ridiculous subfight. It was actually all right. It was done pretty well.
It wasn't stupid, but it was anticlimactic.
Yeah. It's just like all the secondary crew did their jobs pretty well. The writing was bad.
Back aboard Melina's ship, the Triana, and Christados is there with Eric, thanking Bond for the ATAC, as they apparently hadn't gotten it out because they hadn't figured out how to disarm it, even though it's got the bomb squad equivalent of having password as your password.
Here's my thing. I was thinking about that too. If I were to do that security system like that, I would add 3 more wires of different colors,
All dummies.
right? All dummies. That would make that a little more secure.
Christados takes the ATAC, and Eric goes to arrange the sale to the KGB, which, it's revealed, he very much still works for, and any BS about defection was just that.
BS.
They tie Bond and Melina together, and them to the yacht, and then toss them over. When the yacht takes off and the rope goes taut, they rip off the side and are dragged along the water,
Jesus.
in a bit taken from the Live and Let Die novel.
Oh, yes. Keelhold.
Eventually, they hit coral and are cut up, trailing blood. They fly by sharks, but Bond frees his hands and uses the rope to anchor the boat to some coral.
The funniest part of this whole scene, which was really actually pretty well done. I like the whole keelhaul thing. That was kind of dope. But when they're taking off, and they're tied together. The one thing Bond says to this chick is hold tight. We're fucking tied together, dude.
How about hold your fucking breath?
You're right. Hold your
Don't
breath.
panic.
Don't panic.
Slow exhale.
You're right. Something. Hold tight. What else am I supposed to do? I'm tied to you. I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah, it's like in Moonraker when she's like, hold on, James. And he looks up like, no shit, bitch.
Right?
Bond is free of the dragging, but now bleeding around sharks. The rope snaps and a goon is knocked into the water. He is promptly eaten, even though he's not bleeding, and Christados does not care. He orders his crew to run Bond and Melina down, but they just dive down where the boat can't hit them. She takes Bond to where she stored a scuba tank, and that's convenient.
Yeah, well, at least they made a point earlier in the movie that she did.
Christados immediately just believes the sharks have them, and his crew makes for the port.
I'd send somebody down there. I'm that kind of bad guy, I suppose. But we gotta be sure. We gotta go check.
Bond and Melina, back aboard the Triana, lament Christados being gone with the ATAC, and the parrot Max, who was present when Christados got the ATAC, says, ATAC to St. Cyril's, ATAC to St. Cyril's.
Either a very smart parrot. No, I'm sorry, there's no either.
Yeah, it's very lucky that out of all the conversation he overheard between them, that's the bit of information he chose to parrot.
Right, because it takes a long time to get a parrot to come up with a phrase. You gotta repeat that shit over and over and over again.
Not in movies.
Not in the movie.
Cut to a wedding party staged at Bois de Naya Village, an authentic-looking but fake tourist attraction that has since closed. Inside the church, Bond sits in the confessional booth and says, Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. And on the other side, Q takes off a beard, saying, That's putting it mildly, 007. Q is literally here to make that joke and say that there's 439 St. Cyril's in Greece. So which one, Bond? And Bond says, Oh, I know who to contact about that, Q. So then why is this scene here? Yeah, for the audience, I get it. But if Bond was real life, why did he have to tell Q this instead of just going and getting the ATAC before an ATAC?
Well, maybe he didn't know how many St. Cyril's there were on the island. That's the only thing I assumed.
Why does that matter? Now, cut to Bond and Columbo and co. as they're dressed as monks and hiking to St. Cyril's, where they used to hide from the Germans. Only Christados would sacrilege the place like this. So again, why wasn't Columbo the first stop? He was right there, and he was always going to be the end game.
Yeah, I don't know. Bad writing?
This amazing site of temples and monasteries on cliff pinnacles is in Meteora. There are 5 of the original 24 monasteries left, and they got permission with the local government to shoot here. But the monks said fuck right off and hung laundry, plastic sheets, and other detritus about to ruin shots. They put barrels down on helicopter landing spots and did other nefarious shenanigans.
Did they really?
This actually went to a Supreme Court that decided with the local government and the filmmakers, but they still had to use matte paintings to hide the bullshit the monks would have hanging in the background of the shots from the other monasteries.
Huh. Interesting.
Petty.
Yes, monks are petty. They only have one form of protest.
Starving to death?
That's the ultimate, but yes.
Self-immolation.
Self-immolation.
James runs off toward the cliff with a rope and no gear, no quick draws, carabiners, no climbing, anchoring equipment at all. Columbo says that he should have brought more men, and Melina says James wants the element of surprise. But we are only 5 men, Columbo laments. And one woman. Melina says, trying to be a badass while grabbing her crossbow from the goon carrying it up the mountain for her, like, do you need that?
It was funny.
We cut to and establish the A-tag in the monastery with Eric Christados and a henchman named Apostas, played by Jack Claff. Then cut to Bond doing a bit of scrambling as he makes his way up. Back to Christados. He leaves the room. Nice insert.
Nice insert.
Back to Bond. He's officially climbing at this point. The stuntman who skied off of a cliff in The Spy Who Loved Me is back to double for these climbing bits, but they also just harnessed Roger to the side of this cliff for a great many of the shots as well.
Yeah, that's good, because it had some realism.
Roger had a fear of heights, and he took a Xanax and drank a lot of wine, smoked a bunch of cigarettes, and joked around a lot, and he was still so nervous about doing these shots that he freaked out a few times and even got sick.
Did he really?
Mm-hmm.
Poor bastard. Dangling from a cliff.
Columbo and co. move on toward the mountain, and then we cut to BB Doll and her coach, and why?
Why is she still in this movie?
Why is she in it at all?
Yes.
BB complains she's not skating, and Cristado says, we're moving to Cuba. And she says, fuck that, I'm out, old man.
Yeah, smart.
Cristados blames the coach for this and promises to kill her.
Coach is like, fuck that, I'm out, old man.
Cut to Bond scrambling at quite an angle as he and we see the crew walk up behind him. And it's here you start to wonder why he isn't just walking like they are then. They're right next to him after all that. And even if you needed to climb up a certain spot for surprise, you could have obviously saved time and at least started here, if not further up. In layman's, this is dumb.
In layman's, this is dumb.
So out of nowhere, Bond has cams.
Yeah.
I'm not even going to talk about his timing or placement of said cam. I'm just going to call bullshit on his ass, having enough room for them next to the safecracker, microfiche reader, and other ass gadgets he obviously carries around.
There you go, because these were high-tech cams for the 80s.
Those cams are high-tech now. Bond is roped in and hundreds of feet up, hanging on by his fingertips. Down below, Cara George, played by Paul Angelis, looks on with a serious and tense concern, as do the other two Columbo crewmen, Nikos and Santos, played by Stag Theodore and Alkis Kritikos, respectively. Columbo just keeps popping pistachios like they're mints.
He's a pistachio-eating fool.
Back with Bond, he's traversing when director John Glenn's self-admitted calling card pops out. A pigeon. John Glenn loves having a pigeon fly out of something near Bond, as we'll see as the franchise continues. And here's the bird of this movie, jumping out and scaring Bond, causing him to slip and do a Mission Impossible 2 before Mission Impossible 2.
Where do you think Tom Cruise gets his ideas from?
Where the fuck is Bond getting these anchors and carabiners? How many of these are shoved up your ass?
He's got one of those Q pockets.
You've seen me kitted out to climb before, haven't you, Carter? How much shit is just hanging off of...
Yes, yeah.
Bond climbs up and Apostas is standing above him. Surprise, bitch.
Surprise, bitch. Supplies, bitch. Small fries, bitch.
Some fries. All rise.
Rude eyes, bitch.
He kicks Bond in the face and Bond tumbles down and drops. The first two anchors strip out and Bond falls quite a distance before his fall is arrested. Now, this was the guy who skied off a cliff, Rick Sylvester. You need a stuntman who knows how to climb for this because this could have easily killed him, slamming him into the wall or even from the sudden stop.
Yeah.
They rigged a ballast system to drop at the right time and smooth the catch, but this still looked like he very easily could have been killed.
It did. I thought that was a hell of a stunt.
Bond dangles hundreds of feet up. His anchors are slowly moving out, and that's not how that works. Unless it's clay, and you wouldn't be doing this anyways if it was.
Right.
Listen, once an anchor has felt the jolt of you falling, that's a shit ton of force. And at that point they're holding it, there's no further force that's going to pull them out, and they wouldn't take it from a climber.
Because that's what they're designed to do?
It's almost, right?
Right.
Bond takes his shoelaces off and ties them in prusik knots around his rope. He then starts climbing. And I guess I want you to understand something. Training to get out of crevasses, we learn how to prusik like this. It's one of the slowest, most energy-intensive ways to climb ever.
Yeah.
You could just take breaks, which makes it even longer, but that's why it's so effective, because you could take breaks. So eventually you'll get out. It's not like if you're just climbing without anything to hold you there and you like lose your grip and you fall back down. It would take you 12 hours to get out of a 10 to 50-foot hole, and he's hundreds of feet down.
Right.
Once again, take it from a climber.
He climbs like Spider-Man. What are you talking about? Do you see how fast he's shimmying? He pressed up that rope. It was awesome.
He starts climbing, but Apostas has rappelled down, and Apostas is hammering her way at Bond's anchors one by one, each time causing Bond to fall another 10 to 12 feet. And even though Apostas is quickly hammering them away and Bond keeps getting set back, Bond somehow climbs hundreds of feet up a rope and gets up just in time to throw a knife at Apostas, killing him, but also all of this while being held up by one anchor point after pretending they were weak before. This whole sequence is broken.
You're not wrong. I was wondering the same thing. It's like, why doesn't his crew just back up a bit and shoot him with that crossbow?
Too high up.
They had rifles too.
Apostas falls a very long way and lands at the feet of the Columbo crew. Meanwhile, Bond climbs up and sneaks into a room where they winch supplies up into the mountain. He opens the hatch and lowers the basket, then opens a window and looks down to Columbo like 50 feet below. The whole rock climbing scene was so stupid.
They could have climbed that side of the mountain and it had been over in a few moments.
He's literally that close to you at the, like, why did you spend 2 days climbing this thing?
Why did you just climb up this side?
You almost got killed hanging hundreds of feet, and you could have just climbed 50 feet over here.
Yeah, with ground underneath you. And your whole crew waiting.
Columbo, Melina, and Cara George get in the basket, and it starts up again as a goon on patrol hears the winch and finds the doors locked. He looks in the window but sees nothing as Bond is hiding next to him out of sight. The goon then tries to force his way in and then takes aim at the basket as Melina crossbolts him in the fucking lung. But he's cool, they just tie him up.
Right? It's like, what did that get stuck in his sternum?
It's going at this upwards perfect angle that, and in this spot, it's like that's going through his heart and lung.
And
Like,
lung.
that man
Yeah,
is
because they hit
dead.
him on the. It should be. He should be. And he's a little bitch. Because if that was not fatal, then he should have fought back. But whatever.
Cut back to BB. Damn it. She's packing, and cool insert, bro.
Cool insert, bro.
Cut to Kristatos complaining that Eric's general is late. Then to Achapa bringing in General Gogol, and he's almost there. Back to Bond and the Columbo crew have all made it up. They infiltrate the compound, and Melina tends to and concerns for the goon she shot. Columbo says he's cool, just get out of here, and then pistol whips the guy's skull in before catching up.
You know how hard you gotta hit somebody in the front to give them a concussion?
A lot. Crack the skull.
Yeah.
The door they approach opens, and it's BB's coach. They get her to lead them in. Columbo is still just popping pistachios. At all times, even in gunfights.
Yeah, I begin to doubt whether or not there was pistachios. I was thinking that maybe some form of cocaine.
They catch most of the guards in the barracks, quite literally with their pants down, asleep on the job.
Yeah, who are these guards?
The worst, by the way. What is it, like 3 in the afternoon?
You're right.
There's one on patrol and 10 of y'all in here asleep?
Yeah.
What
Asleep?
the fuck?
In the middle of the afternoon? What the fuck is going on? What the fuck?
So as everyone makes their way to Kristatos, BB gets there first and tells Kristatos to go to hell. So Kristatos slaps her. Or at least I think so. First, physics breaks, and sound travels faster than light as we hear a slap. And then a jump cut to his hand on the other side of her head, and her screaming and falling back. It's like the editor spilt coffee on the frames or something. Lord the fuck knows, but it's jarring.
It's jarring.
Cutting back to Gogol, and he hasn't gotten much further from where he was, almost like he paused for a moment to take in the view, but helicopters can hover, so I can't say shit.
Right.
Bond and Columbo attack the last 2 rando goons and fight outside some stained glass, just like in Moonraker with the clock tower. But this time, Bond and his opponent go through the glass and fall down into the room with the baddies.
And bounce off the bed conveniently.
Hey, that's nice.
Yeah.
Cushion.
Mm-hmm.
Eric goes to shoot Bond, but BB knocks his hand with her bag. So he bitch slaps the fuck out of her. And they actually nailed the shot unbroken this time, so what was up with that weird cut in the last slap?
I don't know. Maybe she didn't want to take a slap from the old dude.
But she'll take it from this guy? Oh, well, he is gorgeous.
Right. He's beautiful.
Bond fights Eric, and it's stiff, slow, and Bob Simmonsy, with silly spots like Bond sliding down the table, and of course, all the Fernie will be used as a weapon, and anything not stone destroyed.
This is true. This is very Bob Simmonsy.
While this is happening, Kristatos tries to take the ATAC. Eric lifts a stone planter, and Bond pushes him out of a window to his death, but not before we are treated to a bad dummy fall. Ah, so terrible.
I really thought they stopped doing that in the 70s, but apparently not.
It's been a minute since we have seen a bad dummy fall in a Bond movie. They were all over the early ones, though.
Yeah, and there's a lot in this one.
Kristatos makes a break for it. One of the crew has him dead to rights, but Columbo says in Greek, "No, he's mine," and chases him down. Columbo knocks him over and makes him drop the ATAC. As Gogol is landing and walking up, Bond snags the ATAC, and Melina points her bow at Ol Ari. James stands in between them and says they'll turn him over to the Greek police, and she says, "Out of my way, James." While he's doing his two graves speech again, Kristatos is pulling a knife. He goes to attack, but Columbo throws a knife into Kristatos' back, which, as you know, instantly kills you. Arrow through the heart and lung, you cool. Knife in the back, ooh, that's fatal.
Dumb. Yes.
We were in the army, and we were both medics. We know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Gogol walks up with a goon, pointing a gun at Bond with a shit-eating grin on his face. Gogol genuinely believes Bond will just hand him the ATAC, but Bond hurls it off the cliff because, duh, Bond was never going to do that. Britain's fucking bulldog.
Right?
Bond hurls it off a cliff. They show a few shots of it falling and a slow-mo of its destruction. You know what Bond should have done if this is where we ended up anyways?
Blowing it up underwater, set the
Yep.
timer.
Set that
2
1 minute
minutes.
timer he found on the ATAC to 10 minutes
Right.
and booked it instead of disarming and removing it. I mean, look, this was the outcome.
Why did we even take it off the boat? Why didn't we just blow it up there?
Movie.
Because
the guy banging the producer's daughter wrote this. And that was his qualification for writing it, is that he bangs the producer's daughter.
And ice skaters.
Cutting to nighttime, aboard the Triana, and Bond is getting it on with Melina. The refrain is hitting again. Melina asks for a moonlight suite. Q calls Bond on his watch, but Bond drops the watch in front of Max, who squawks. She says, "For your eyes only, darling," and drops her clothes. Q says, "Bond? Bond." And Max says, "Bond, Bond." And Q naturally assumes that Bond's there and goes to patch him through. So cut to Downing Street, and Margaret Thatcher, played by Janet Brown, is there with Dennis Thatcher, played by John Wells. And it's very much like, what if first season SNL did Margaret Thatcher?
It sure is. And like in hindsight, okay, yeah, I guess you were trying to be funny, but it's just didn't land that way.
It's over the top, but it's not funny.
Right.
Thatcher answers her phone, and they tell her Bond is on the line. She thanks Bond personally, and basically has a conversation with a parrot. Riveting stuff, brilliant must-see writing.
It's awesome.
The parrot fucks with everyone a little while, and dumps the watch overboard. Hard cut to the credits. All about the water in this ending, making up for Moonraker breaking the streak. So this movie was pretty good. It really was. And I know that might be surprising after all we've said so far, but here's the thing. There's not as much to complain about or critique. And what is there isn't as bad as the sins of the past few films. It's not a bad movie, but it also doesn't stand out at this point in the franchise either. It's played far too safe. It's not boring, but it's not exciting. I'm giving it a C+. I feel like the tension wasn't tense, and the jokes weren't funny. Some of the crew and actors were at the top of their game, but some weren't.
Moonraker was a worse movie. Technically worse, but way more entertaining. This movie's pacing. The whole movie was off with the writing.
What do you mean? What do you mean the pacing was off? What gave you the hint? When we had to have our Bond girl reappear for 5 seconds for no reason just to send her away again because it's been so long that we had to remind the audience that she's in the movie?
Yes, things like that. Needless characters, needless subplot points. The movie, however, was, as Matthew said, technically very well done. The stunts, probably the best I've seen in a Bond movie in a long time. For real this time. There's some good stunts in this movie. The sets were boring. The shots were not good shots. Overall, I'm going to give this movie a solid C because it was very middle of the road.
What about the kill count? How many people do you think Bond kills in this?
I'm going to say Bond killed 4 people?
18.
18?
36 others for a grand total of 54. So more by our boy Bond, but not too high of a total. The pre-title. The helicopter in the pre-title flying through the gasworks with Martin on the outside is nuts, but the rest is very silly. Juvenile in intention and in execution. Why did the priest that sold him out also warn/pray for him? How did Bond turn around in that building without clipping his rotors on literally anything? Who knows? 8th place.
That's better than what I gave it. I gave it a solid 10th place. It's like, it was cheesy. Moonraker's pre-title sequence was better than that. Moonraker was stupid.
I don't know. I didn't absolutely hated Moonraker's opening sequence with Jaws flapping like a bird. Well, how about the title and theme?
I gave this is about 6th place. Kind of right in the middle. It wasn't as good as the best ones, and it's not as bad as the worst ones. It landed right in the middle.
The titles are technically executed so well, but the song is beyond shit, and she's front and center singing it the whole time like the worst music video ever. 12th place.
Ouchie.
Moneypenny pickup line. He calls her a feast for his eyes, and she says, "What about the rest?" And he noshes on her neck. 3rd place.
Yeah, okay. Okay, I just said this was kind of tame compared to some of the other ones I've seen already. So I gave it a 10th place.
Wow. We are opposite on the spectrum on this one. Most of the ones we've gone through actually hadn't had very much of any interaction at all, and definitely in some of them, the interactions weren't romantic if there was
Right.
one. To be fair, they were both like geriatric at this point.
Right.
But they were trying. Like, he went to like nosh on her neck, and there was a sexually suggestive line. He's like, "You're beautiful." That's like that friendly workplace banter. "You're a feast for my eyes." But then she goes, "Well, what about the rest of you?" You know, that's when it steps it up. And then he goes after her neck, and I'm like, all right, 3rd place. And so you said 10th place.
Mm-hmm.
Cute gadgets. What gadgets? A digital sketch artist? A watch phone? 7th place.
Yeah, we're about the same. Like 9th place for me, because it had gadgets.
Question mark?
Question mark. Right.
Cars. The Lotus Esprit Turbo. It doesn't look as good. It doesn't really do anything but exist. 5th place.
That's basically what I said. Like, I like Lotuses, so 7th place.
Right? You got bonus points for being a Lotus. That makes you feel better.
Right?
Main ally, Milos Colombo. This guy is pure swagger and the perfect definition of an anti-hero. He's smart, informed, rich. He's got the goods and the guys. He'll save the day and kill the bad guy. The ATAC would have gotten away if not for him. T'Pol nailed this guy, who's just too cool, and he gets 1st place for me.
Woo! I'm going to give him 3rd place. Nobody's going to beat Karim in my eyes. There you go. 3rd place.
Villains. Aristotle Christados, a former war hero turned smuggler, initially fooling Bond into thinking he's an ally and planning to expand his fortune by selling the ATAC to the KGB. But he's just a smarmy drug dealer and doesn't feel like much more than a shite thug. No scope. Julian Glover is pretty good, though. He was actually on the short list for Bond in Live and Let Die before Moore got it. 9th place.
For once, we agree. I have him also in 9th place. His villain was, he was all right. Smarter than your average villain, a little schmarmy, nothing to jump up and down about. I give him a 9th place as well.
He's played well. He's played cool. He seems smart, but he's a nobody.
Right.
He's a middleman.
Yes.
Main hench, Erich Kriegler, an East German Olympic-class biathlete assassin, second in command of the operation and the KGB contact. He looks intimidating. He nails the part, but what does the character do? Think about it. Literally nothing but bend his gun and get thrown out of a window. 10th place, still better than Vargas and Yanni, who didn't do shit and weren't intimidating.
I put him in 11th place because he was fucking useless.
The guy they killed off halfway through was a better henchman.
Yes, Klaus? Yes.
Klaus too, yeah, but I meant Locke.
Oh, Locke? Yes.
Locke
Yes.
should have been the main hench. I have no idea why he wasn't.
I don't know.
Bond girl, Melina Havelock, and I'll actually pronounce her name the way they do in the movie for this last bit for her as an honor for her. She's stunning, and I mean gorgeous. The actress became the face of Chanel after the movie. The character does a couple of small things, but not really much, and exists to exist, as at one point, she pops up just to remind us she exists, and then Bond sends her away again. 6th place. Super hot, so that helped.
Overall, she didn't do a whole lot but shoot that crossbow once or twice.
And even then, she was like, I'm sorry, I take it back.
Right? So, 8th place.
One-liner. When Blofeld says, Mr. Bond, we can do a deal. I'll buy you a delicatessen in stainless steel, please. And Bond says, all right, keep your hair on.
You like that one, huh?
Because he's bald, you get it?
Yes.
That is the funniest one-liner that I think Bond pulls off in this movie. And it doesn't mean that I like it. I think it really just goes to shine a light on how bad the one-liners are. The jokes in this movie aren't as rapid fire, and as such, they don't hit you with so many groaners, at least, so 7th place.
My one-liner was, he doesn't have a head for heights, after he kicked old boy off the cliff there, because for me it was the only joke that landed. 8th place is where that puts it.
8th place. Locations, and you know how I do this. Spain, Greece, and because we really only have 2 locations, they technically went to Albania for that warehouse raid.
Yeah, technically. I gave it pretty much 7th place because they tried.
Fair?
You know, the locations weren't horrible.
I guess.
The shots could have been better, but...
Much?
Yeah, they could have been much better, but they weren't terrible.
They also didn't really do anything in service of the story of the fact that they were there. Like, none of the locations
You're right.
did, you know what I mean? It didn't showcase.
It didn't detract, but it didn't showcase. 7th place?
The locations are there. They use them effectively in the story, I guess, though Spain feels like Greece. They just don't show shit off. It's 10th place for me. It's still better than Brown Desert Nothing of Diamonds Are Forever, but that's about it.
Well, there you go.
Protracted attempt to kill Bond. They tie Bond up to a boat and drag him around, hoping sharks will eat him or he'll bleed to death on the coral, though I'm giving too much credit because he was definitely banking on sharks. 6th place.
Keelhauling is a great way to kill people. Just saying, Pirates been doing it for a long time. I dug it. I just wish that villains would check for bodies more. Like, you know, Bond notoriously gets out of the death trap because they walk away. I gave this a 4th because I thought it was a pretty decent attempt at it, at least.
You could actually kill a fucker doing that.
Yeah. Real talk. You
Real talk, yeah. You kill someone doing that pretty easily. Drown them, cut them up on that coral, they fucking dead.
No, you gave it a good attempt. The best attempt, one of the best attempts so far.
One of the best attempts so far. Yeah.
Yes.
Mission or plot. Retrieve and or destroy a secret attack module before the Russians or anyone else can get it and use it to attack Britain with its own weapons. Basically, get a computer back from a stuffy old dude that fancies himself a pirate. It's realistic at least, but probably the lowest stakes ever. 7th place.
I agree with you 100%. Get the MacGuffin is not the best plot for a Bond movie, in my opinion.
Get the MacGuffin from the middleman.
Right? So I gave this 9th place because we've had better plots.
Stunts. The stunts were amazing. The pyro teams, the fight teams, the ski teams, the dive teams. Rick and Roger on the climbing shit, even if it made less than 0 cents. You can't blame these guys for that. They're just out getting it. 2nd place.
Wow. Okay. Okay. I gave this 4th place. I like the stunts.
Nonstop insanity. They dropped a dude like 300 feet, and I have no idea how he didn't fucking die. They threw a citron at a lorry. The score.
The score. As much as I love Sheena Easton, the song sucked. If you like that kind of stuff, it's alright. It's a decent love song. It's very white. I'm never a huge fan of 80s disco. I like older disco or 80s synth. But that thing that it was between those 2 points, I didn't groove on too much. So this is 10th place.
The score is punchy, dancey, funky. It gets silly at times as it hams along with the movie, but he's just doing his job and accentuating the movie. No slide whistle either, so. But really, a lot more lively and modern for the time than Barry was giving lately, and I actually thought it was pretty good of a score. It did have an over reliance on the refrain instead of crafting more themes, so 6th place.
Hmm.
Movie.
We've mentioned middle of the road here a few times. This movie is not as bad as the bad ones, and nowhere near as good as the good ones. So it landed in 8th place.
Pretty close to the middle.
Pretty close to the middle.
It's almost like it's where it belongs. This movie is something else. As I said before, it's never really bad, but it never really hits the mark, even though it feels like it should. So many of the right pieces, but it still feels like something is missing the whole time. Losing some key talent for sets and photography really set back the feel of this movie and its presentation, while the writing was lackluster at best and horrendous at worst. Mike Wilson, buddy, just sign the checks and hire a writer for yourself next time, eh?
Please.
It's got great moments, and it's fun most of the time. It's got Roger's best, coldest moment, and one I definitely felt was needed to fully bring Bond out of the era that Connery started and into the 1980s and beyond sensibilities. The Spy Who Loved Me was slightly better than this, but was also way more silly. This ties that movie, but I'm gonna budget ahead for the darker tone and that wicked scene with the car kick. So 7th place.
There you go.
And as they said, Bond will return in Octopussy. And so will we. So until then,
I'm Chris Carter.
and I'm Agent Sedgwick.
Stay spying, y'all.